Well, as you know, more often than perhaps I should, I like to titillate you, or maybe in some cases ruffle your feathers, depending on what section of the audience you are, about the fact that INFJs don't have FI or indeed any shadow functions. Now, I should immediately add the proviso that for people who have an 8-function model, but that doesn't incorporate shadow function, where all the functions essentially are conscious, I mean, that comes with its own problems, but I can totally imagine that model is defensible. A model like that can be articulate and it can be convincing for some people. My issue, as you know, with for an 8-function model where you have essentially what amounts, for example, in the case of an INFJ to an ENFP shadow, my issue with it is that it's incoherent, and therefore it's not a case of, okay, how good is the model, how convincing is the model, why should I stick to an 4-function model if I have that alternative? Perhaps for some descriptions of some instances and events, the 8-functional model is better. I mean, it doesn't apply if the model itself is incoherent, because it essentially cancels itself out in incoherence. And I've been reading some Jung again lately. I'm trying to, I had read the first kind of 7 or 8 volumes of his complete works, and I'm resuming it because I want to continue, basically finding nourishment in Jung's insights. And also it's a way of always rejuvenating also my ideas regarding the channel and what to talk about. And there's something interesting that Jung says about complexes in volume 8, which is called Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche. And what Jung says is, and it sort of goes against some of my own points, so I want to be completely honest, and come clean about this. He says that complexes in the unconscious, there is evidence to support the idea that complexes are, splintered personality fragments that have their own agency. And I think that the way you can interpret this is to say, well, there is, at least for Jung, a credible view according to which shadow complexes have agency and therefore are sufficiently, they have sufficient resolution, like a sense of resolution. They're sufficiently complete in and of themselves that they can have agency and therefore be understood potentially in terms of functions. Okay, because if a shadow complex has sufficient energy charge, libido charge, and therefore enough agency, then it may just be possible to speak about shadow complexes in terms of functions, in which case it looks at first like, okay, maybe we can speak of shadow functions after all, and there's no incoherence. Now, that's Jung's view back in the day, right? But let's assume that that's a credible view and that Jung said it and it's fine. But what immediately struck me is that there's a further challenge that immediately emerges from all this. And it is this. Jung, even as he says this, he simultaneously makes the point, he puts the point very clearly. He says, this agency that the shadow complex, it's not the ego, it's the unconscious. So it's a splintered personality. It's not, in a sense, it's not your personality insofar as you are a self with an ego. You speak from the point of view of the ego consciousness. So what this means is that if translated into the vocabulary of INFJs possibly having, ENFP shadow functions, including FI as an auxiliary of the shadow, you then would have to be ready to concede that FI is not really your function. It's the function of one of your complexes, right? In a sense, you could say, okay, like your unconscious has FI. If I wanted to put the point very succinctly and perhaps not completely accurately, but that's essentially the core, nugget of the idea here, is that it's your unconscious that has FI, and your unconscious is not your agency. So in a sense, you can't really claim FI for yourself, which means quite concretely that you cannot, in fact, according to this Jungian view, you cannot really explain your actions, your thoughts, your directed behavior, your conscious behavior around the world, what you feel about a certain thing, your engagement with particular activity or conversation. You can't speak of your FI, because that kind of explanation would be in reference to your ego stance, right? Your ego consciousness, the one that has the 4 functions. The 4 functions you're familiar with: NI, FE, TI, SE. In other words, according to this particular theory, or this particular theoretical standpoint anyway, the best thing that you can say is, okay, sometimes, you know, my unconscious produces dreams, or sometimes I act in ways that are not rational and not really conscious. My unconscious is dictating my behavior. I'm not really in control of myself. I'm not directing my behavior. It's not, my will is not at stake. My will is not in the driver's seat. And in this case, for these particular patterns of behavior or dreaming or fantasizing, then or rather my unconscious shows FI. But you have to restrict your explanations to that particular area and never actually refer to your directed behavior in conscious interactions with external reality. Is that what INFJs want, who want to be able to claim that they possess FI? Personally, I don't think so. I think that would be not satisfactory, would not be sufficient, but I still would be interested to hear what you guys think. So I will stop here, and there is a train that's passing by. As you know, my house is close to train lines, kind of annoying, but anyway, I will stop here. I want to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, give me a like. You know, speaking of shadows and life, INFJs and all, I have written 2 books on the personality. You probably know this by now: The Infinite Soul, and how to lead a rich, fulfilling and purposeful life in a world that is often hostile to us. The Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World. Check it out, it's fresh out of the oven. Good reviews so far, needs more reviews. If you like the book, please drop a review on Amazon. And his prequel, The Ecstatic Soul, which is more a look at the inside about the INFJ mind and its existential manifestations. It's pretty deep investigation of the type and the consciousness of the type. So if you're interested, you can get the 2 books. And again, this one, reviews, please, it helps. And I have a Patreon page, you know, keeps, my Patreon supporters are the lifeblood of my channel, which really keeps the channel going. So any support you could provide, any donations, anything like that would be so appreciated. And you can get to interact with me, and I get access to some bonus content, and I'm doing up some young readings at the moment as well there, so consider it. And thank you to my supporters. Okay, see you soon, guys. Bye-bye.